I took a contract to bury the body of Blasphemous Bill Mackay, whenever, wherever, or whatsoever the manner of death he die, whether he die by the light of day or under the peak-faced moon, in cabin or dance hall, camper dive, mucklucks or patent shoon, by velvet tundra or glassy peak, by glacier drift or draw, by muskeg hollow or canyon gloom, by avalanche, fang or claw, by battle, murder or sudden wealth, by pestilence, hooch or lead, I swore on the book I'd follow and look till I found my tombless dead. But Bill was a dainty kind of a cuss, and his mind was mighty set on a dinky patch with flowers and grass in a civilised boneyard lot. And how he died and where he died didn't matter a damn, so long as he had a grave with frills and a tombstone epigram. So I promised him, and he paid the price in good cheap-chaco coin. That same I blowed on that same night down in the Tenderloin. But I painted a 3-foot slab of pine. Here lies poor Bill Mackay, and I hung it up on my cabin wall, and I waited for Bill to die. Years passed away, and at last, one day, came a squaw with a story strange of a long deserted line of traps way back of the Bighorn Range, of a little cabin by a great divide, and a white man, stiff and still, lying there by his lonesome self, and I figured it must be Bill. And I thought of the promise I'd made to him, and I took down from the shelf that swell black box with the silver plate he'd picked out for himself. And I loaded it up with grub and hooch and flung it up on a sleigh, and I harnessed up my team of dogs and was off at the dawn of day. Well, you know what it's like in the winter wild when it's 59 below and the ice worms wriggle their purple heads through the crust of the pale blue snow, and the pine trees crack like little guns in the silence of the woods, and the icicles hang down like tusks under your parka hood, and the stovepipe smoke breaks sudden off, and the sky is weirdly lit, and the careless feel of a piece of steel burns like a red-hot spit, and the mercury is a frozen ball, and the frost fiend stalks to kill. Well, 'twas just like that the day that I set out to look for Bill. The awful hush that seemed to crush me down on every hand as I stumbled blind with a trail to find through that blank and bitter land, half dazed, half crazed through the winter wild with its grim heartbreak and woes and the gruesome strife for a grip on life that only the sourdough knows. North by the compass, north I pressed, river and plain and peak, past in a dream I slept to lose and woke to dream again. River and plain and mighty peak, and who could stand unawed? As each summit blazed, he could stand undazed at the foot of the throne of God. North, aye, north, through a land accursed, shunned by the scouring brute, and all I heard was my own harsh word and the whine of the malamute, till at last I came to a cabin squat, cut in the side of the hill. I burst in the door, and there on the floor, frozen to death, Bill. Ice, white ice, like a winding sheet, sheathed each smoke-grimed wall, ice on the stovepipe, ice on the bed, ice gleaming over all, glittering ice in the dead man's chest, sparkling ice in his hair, ice in his fingers, ice in his heart, ice in his glassy stare, stiff as a log, and trussed like a frog with arms and legs outspread. I looked at the coffin I brought for him, and I looked at the gruesome dead. At last I spoke. Bill liked his joke, but still, gall darn his eyes. A man had ought to consider his mates in the way he goes and dies. Have you ever stood in an Arctic hut in the shadow of the pole with a little coffin, 6 by 2, and a grief you can't control? Have you ever sat by a gruesome corpse, that looked at you with a grin that seemed to say, you may try all day, but you'll never jam me in. Well, I'm not a man of the quitting kind, but I never felt so blue as I sat there looking at that stiff and figuring what I'd do. I arose and kicked off the husky dogs that were sniffing round about, and I lit a roaring fire in the stove, and I started to thaw Bill out. Well, I thawed and thawed for 13 days. Didn't do no good. His arms and legs stuck out like pegs as if they was made of wood. At last I cried, it ain't no use. He's froze too hard to thaw. He's obstinate. He won't lie straight. So I guess I'll have to saw. So I sawed off poor Bill's arms and legs, and I laid him snug and straight in that little coffin he'd picked hisself with a dinky silver plate. And I came nigh near to shedding a tear as I safely nailed him down and loaded him up on my Yukon sleigh and headed back to town. So I buried him, as the contract was, in that narrow grave and deep, and there he's waiting the great clean-up when the judgment sluice head sweep. And as I smoke my pipe and I meditate in the land of the midnight sun, I often think if there really was the awful things I'd done. And as I sit and the parson talks, expounding of the law, I often think of poor old Bill and how hard he was to saw.